Your favorite crime that you've...
Yes, 1998 में जो पहला इंसान था जिसने सीरियलाइज्ड मैनर में क्राइम को पॉपुलराइज किया वो सुहेब इलियासी. Now we can talk about his story later. He started a show called India's Most Wanted. 2 years later became India's Most Wanted, accused of the murder of his own wife. But one place in Rajasthan where we did go, which was haunting in like the adjective, not necessarily literally, was the Balaji temple. And it's one of the most prominent exorcism temples of India. 80s or 90s में travelers that have written travelogues of this place talk about people hanging upside down being beaten by bats to get the ghost out. People being chained for months at one place, not being given food so that the ghost dies hungry. But many people have also died in this process. Of course. कुछ कहते हैं नहीं होते और कुछ कहते हैं बंद दरवाजों के पीछे होते. True crime has a wider female audience than almost any other genre. After cosmetics and ये सब, this is what is consumed.
Really? This is not a regular The Chillar episode. This is sending chills down my spine for sure. Talk to us about your childhood.
So what would you like to know about?
Everything.
Everything. So 9 January. I shouldn't remember that.
9 January 1990.
Son. Man, I think I had a great childhood. Parents that were willing to put in more than their means to get me educated and give me opportunities. Now, friends would, say that the childhood was turbulent because of everything that's happened. But to me, what I take back from it is it was a lovely childhood. Separated parents, so those things. But I think just having parents that went beyond their means pretty much summed up my childhood and gave me a good education. And
how do you how do you deal with when you have parents who have separated? What does it go on in the child's mind? Are you the only child?
No, I have a younger brother.
Okay.
I think because I have friends with separated parents, and I know of other people in general who have had parents that are separated or divorced. And man, each kid interprets it very differently. Like, I count myself a lucky minority that wasn't debilitated by their parents' separation and was able to sort of interpret it differently and sort of adapt to it much differently in a more positive than negative way. And I really think it's just happenstance and luck that I was able to process it that way, because I have friends of single separated parents or single mother households where that that lack of a father figure or a lack of a mother figure has really crippled them in their social life in their 20s and 30s and 40s. So what goes on in a child's mind is really sort of unique to that particular child, and unique to how the parents have then dealt with the separation.
So how did you deal with it? And you can absolutely choose to
Sure.
answer the question, but you can absolutely go as much deep as you can.
How did I choose to deal with it? I say this often to my friends. पता नहीं क्यों यार, बताऊँ, I think my high school breakup was tougher than my parents separating. For some reason, I was able to emotionally lock their relationship just away. Like, I didn't emotionally participate in it at all. I've never talked about this publicly, but I was able to somehow just pack it up and not think about it. And for the longest time, I was like, damn, I'm itna emotionally strong. As a kid, I was self-talk. And then my first breakup happened. And oh my God, it was the toughest thing I've ever been through as a kid. And I realized that it's not that I'm emotionally this, sigma male that can put through anything. It's just somehow that 10, 12-year-old Aryaan was able to process the separation differently. But seriously, bro, like I don't know how. I'm not fully sure. I don't know how I was able to process it. I think I had my younger brother, so there was a sort of element of responsibility I felt towards him, and we have a very, very strong relationship to this day. So maybe I was able to channel some of that in that positive relationship. But yeah, uske alawa, I'm not sure how I processed the separation.
Who were you closer to?
My mom. My
Okay.
mom. Yeah. Close to my mom, but close to my brother. I think so. Most kids are able to process separation because they come up with adaptive mechanisms which prove to be maladaptive as they grow up. So, जैसे people who have commitment issues, a lot of it can be sometimes traced back to their relationship with their parents, where people usually single parent households have commitment issues because the closest person in their life could eviscerate, right, could just disappear, could just go, right, not that relationship could be tarnished. So the adaptive mechanism a kid comes up with is commitment issues ki मैं commitment में ज़्यादा invest ही नहीं करता. In that particular relationship it proves beneficial, right, कि if that kid had over invested in that relationship with one of their parent, they would feel that it would break them. But since they are avoiding that investment and having some sense of attachment issues, tab ke liye it's an adaptation. But when you're in your 20s and you have to be in a romantic relationship, that adaptation, that relationship type becomes a maladaptive coping mechanism you've come up with. So kids of single parent households come up with coping mechanisms that serve a purpose in that specific scenario but become maladaptive as you go on. I think, advantage in my 20s has been that I've been able to understand those those coping mechanisms and see it for what they are and not emulate that in all the other relationships I have. So I think that proved helpful.
But is the line very thin?
The line is very thin. Because it's very tough to detect what's a coping mechanism that you have inbuilt. People who sort of, and this is one example, and I'm not a psychologist or whatever, but it's just personal experience and a bit of reading about it. But people who have, who have attachment issues, it can often be traced back to their childhood, and the reason is because attachment issues aren't like most things that we develop tend to be advantageous at a certain point, वरना वो tendencies हम में आती नहीं. Like anxiety, for example. Anxiety का source isn't inherently bad. Like you feel anxious because something is going wrong in your life, and anxiety is a signal कि fix it. Now that signal can then sort of metastasize into something so big that you forget about the problem that instigated it and you let it take over yourself and whatnot. So
Correct.
Most things that happen to us at that certain period are for coping with that certain scenario. But we tend to keep them and repeat those patterns and not realize that that pattern is not necessarily befitting each situation we find ourselves in.
So when you say there is, because when you cope with something like this, there is a very thin line of difference between that scenario and when you talk about it in general parlance कि ठीक है अभी मेरे साथ ये हो रहा है, I would deal with this a certain way, but does that scar you for later on?
It scars many people, I think. That's why psychology therapy is such a booming business, is because it does scar people for a long time. I do think though the way to prevent it, not for others, this is not a prescription now, what helped me was knowledge of these patterns, right? Knowledge is power, and in sort of reading about certain patterns that I had noticed in myself, right? Something as small as repetition compulsion, which is this need to repeat a certain scenario is negative for yourself, but you will constantly put yourself in it again and again. And I found myself doing this in certain scenarios where I knew it was negative for me. I knew it was bad for me, but मैं फिर से दोहरा रहा था. I was like, क्यों? I know it's wrong. And Gabor Mate is a sort of therapist, a very renowned therapist, and I heard him on a podcast, read a book where he talked about repetition compulsion. So he gave this phenomena a term, and I was able to label what I was experiencing, which is very helpful. And repetition compulsion was essentially you put yourself back in negative scenarios in an attempt to want to this time approach it correctly. So you will see many women that have been in abusive relationships find themselves constantly in abusive relationships, and you're like, man, we have so many of those friends where you look at the partner they are having and you're like, this is not good for you. Even they're aware of it, but they put themselves again and again in a similar relationship that's not good for them. And one of the reasons Gabor Mate enlists for that is they put themselves back because they're trying to this time do it correctly. This time they're going to fix everything. This time there won't be abuse. And so it is an attempt to sort of clean the slate by putting yourself back in the same situation. And so it's a compulsion to repeat, hence repetition and compulsion.
Now enter
Hard pivot
to Desi Crime.
Yeah.
You began this 5 years back.
2020, 4 years, yeah. Almost 4 years.
4 years back. What was the motive to start a crime podcast?
Yeah. So yaar, ek to this was the zamana where not everybody had a podcast.
Of course.
2020 tha, nobody had a podcast actually. I mean, India में it was far and few between. तो तुम लोग ने हम लोग का नाम ख़राब किया हुआ है कि अब हम मैं अगर किसी को बोलूँ मैं पॉडकास्ट ट्रू क्राइम पॉडकास्ट कहते हैं, अच्छा तो 2 लोग इंटरव्यू करते हैं किसी में, नहीं देयर आर अदर पॉडकास्ट दैट एग्जिस्ट, वी आर अ नैरेटिव पॉड.
नाम खराब किया तो तुम यहाँ क्यों बैठे हो फिर?
नहीं तुम लोग ने इंडस्ट्री बढ़ाई बट टार्निश कर दिया. नैरेटिव पॉडकास्ट वाला इंडिया में कुछ है ही नहीं. इंडिया में ओनली इंटरव्यू पॉडकास्ट आर अंडरस्टूड. तो बट back in 2020, it was neither narrative nor interview podcasts were a thing per se. And I was in the US studying, and one of my childhood friends, Aishwarya, who's my co-host now, dude, she's a big crime junkie. Like, your typical crime junkie gal listens to true crime podcasts, watches true crime docus. She loves it. And हम same college में भी थे वहाँ. तो वो इंसिस्ट करती थी कि यार ये वाला क्राइम जंकीज़ का एपिसोड सुनो. और मुझे क्राइम कंज्यूम करना नहीं अच्छा लगता. आई एम नॉट अ बिग क्राइम जॉनर फैन. तो मैं हर बार डिफ्लेक्ट करता रहता था, डिले करता रहता था, अंटिल वन फाइन डे वो इंसिस्ट कर रही है और मैंने सॉर्ट ऑफ उस पर क्विप किया कि ए व्हाई डू यू लिसन टू ऑल दीज वाइट क्राइम पॉडकास्ट, व्हाई नॉट लिसन टू एन इंडियन ट्रू क्राइम पॉडकास्ट, देयर इज ऑफ क्राइम हैपनिंग बैक होम. But it was partly facetious कि देखो तुम सुनती नहीं हो. But in that 10 seconds, she didn't have an answer to why she doesn't. And we realized an opportunity exists. There's a creative appetite that's not being fulfilled in the form of crime well covered in India. India में crime coverage क्या रही है? सतर्क रही है. It's targeting it's cheapifying the genre, and so it closes it off to a certain milieu of society, right? And even in Indians को quality दिया ही नहीं जाता है. इंडिया में प्रॉब्लम क्या है प्रोडक्ट का? अगर MVP बन जाता है ना, और MVP बिकता है, MVP being minimum viable product, अगर बिकता है, you will never iterate. Why to iterate on something जो बिक रहा है? एंड इंडिया में ये कंटेंट के साथ बहुत ऑफ्टन है कि अगर एक तरीके की मूवी चल रही है तो वही बनाते रहो ना, क्यों इनोवेशन करना ही क्यों है? और पैसे लगेंगे और ऐसा कोई खास डिफरेंस नहीं होगा इन व्यूज़ और वट एवर द मेट्रिक फॉर सक्सेस इन दैट पर्टिकुलर फील्ड है. सो वी थॉट देयर वाज अ स्पेस फॉर फॉर्मेट इनोवेशन of going beyond the MVP of crime, which was the Satark Rahiye style, the Shavadhan India style, and creating it in English, well-researched, high-quality audio. तो यार उसकी वजह से हमने शुरू किया देसी क्राइम. उसका क्राइम का इंटरेस्ट, हम दोनों राइटर्स थे ही, ऑडिटर्स रहे हैं थ्रू आउट हाई स्कूल एंड कॉलेज लाइफ. हमने कहा यार डॉर्म रूम से शुरू कर दो, शुरू कर दिया. And yeah, the creative career just snowballs into directions you're unaware of.
How does India perceive crime?
Yeah.
How does India cover, unravel crime as a genre? Genre तो मैं मतलब content perspective से बोल रहा हूँ, but actual crime is happening, right?
Correct.
So how does India perceive crime as a how do I term it? But how does India perceive crime, and how is it covered in India?
How is it covered in India?
Is it primarily Shavadhan India, and what are they doing wrong
Apart
from everything?
No, I wouldn't say that.
These are jokes. These are just jokes.
I know the producer and all their friends, but I would say how India perceives. How people perceive crime first. Crime across the world appeals to something innately in humans. There is something, whether it is voyeurism, तो किसी और का दुर्घटना देखना विदाउट एक्सपीरियंसिंग इट, जैसे ग्लैडिएटर्स क्यों पॉपुलर थे, क्यों मतलब आप कोलोसियम में होना चाहते हो टू सी टू पीपल फाइट ईच अदर टू डेथ, वो क्या, वो वॉयरिज्म है, वो वेयर डज दैट कम फ्रॉम? आई एम नॉट अ साइकोलॉजिस्ट, आई डोंट नो, बट merely having been in this space, I seldom, like I myself try to understand how this desire stems from, but this desire exists. How it does, एक वो psychologist के लिए छोड़ दो, it does exist. Crime, something inherently appealing about it. तो 1998 में जो पहला इंसान था जिसने serialized manner में crime को popularize किया, वो सुहेब इलियासी. Now we can talk about his story later. He started a show called India's Most Wanted. 2 years later became India's Most Wanted, accused of the murder of his own wife. So we can get into this story. It's one of my most favorite stories and fascinating story of that. But 1998 में इंडिया में क्राइम सीरियल और शो शुरू हुए सुहेब इलियासी के शो के साथ. And ever since we've had the crime patrols and the Shavadhan Indias. I'm talking true crime, not fictionalized like CID or something.
Right.
Something. So I think those crime patrol and Shavadhan India types served as a minimum viable product, क्योंकि उन्होंने देखा crime को low production में recreate करो. These shows have gone on for 300, 400 episodes, mint money for these platforms. They mint money because they get eyeballs because of how the Indian viewer consumes crime. इंडिया में एक वियर्ड चीज़ विद क्राइम शोज़ है, आपने अपने घर में नोटिस किया होगा, वेर योर मॉम विल प्ले इट एंड घर के दूसरे काम करे जाएंगे. इट इज़ लाइक द वाइट नॉइज टू इंडियन हाउस होल्ड्स. क्राइम पेट्रोल एंड सावधान इंडिया विल प्ले as the background music of your house, which is so weird, but there is something peaceful about it, something peaceful about that guy coming on the screen telling you about yahan 4 murder kaise hue. I don't understand the psychology of it fully, but that's how there's a lot of passive consumption of crime in India when it comes to Shavadhan India and all. But because of these shows, ek jo problem हो गया है crime का in how it's perceived is the negative connotation that comes with it. Now, of course, it's a murder. There's going to be negative connotation. But you can cover a negative topic in a way that the connotation is not negative. So I'll give you an example of, say, a Don't with Cats or a Jeffrey Dahmer का जो Netflix ने show बनाया. I don't know if you've seen either of them. Gory true crime case. Very gory. But the way it was covered, man, the treatment of the show was so impeccable in terms of the storytelling that nobody would go from the show and be like, "Ye kya main murder dekh raha hu?" You'd be like, "I've just seen a masterpiece, an artful masterpiece, the topic of which was crime." Just like war movies, right? Now, a cheaply made war movie could feel like propaganda, correct? But if you watch The Pianist or if you see Saving Private Ryan, like, that's art. So I think any topic, if treated well and if packaged well and if told well, can be viewed as art. And what I'm sensing in India right now is, at least we at Desi Crime are trying to move it from, cheap and unethical of, just getting clicks from people's deaths, because it is a ethically dubious space to work in. You're getting clicks from a murder at the end of the day. How do we make that go from commercial to done in an artistic and well manner, creatively well done, where it is bringing some, shedding light on the victim's case and doing justice to the whole story?
Okay. And this is how essentially that's the scene where crime is at in terms of India,
Yeah.
because that's how much of it is fictional, how much of it is truly done, truly made. Is it, of course, क्योंकि content perspective से है तो थोड़ा मसाला ऐड करना पड़ेगा, थोड़ा सा ड्रामा ऐड होता है, बट
यार देखो, देसी मतलब अपने एपिसोड्स में तो हम ट्रू क्राइम पॉडकास्ट है, वी डोंट वेयर फ्रॉम द फैक्ट्स, एंड इफ वी गेट इट रॉन्ग वी विल लाइक मेंशन इट इन आवर वेरेवर डिस्क्रिप्शन और कमेंट दैट ये फैक्ट गलत हो गया. ज़्यादा मिर्च मसाला पॉडकास्ट में नहीं होता. एट द मोस्ट वी विल लाइक टेक सम ट्रूमन कपोटी लाइक लिबर्टी एंड गो कि इट वॉज अ सनी डे जस्ट टू सेट द मूड. तो मे बी बारिश हो रही होगी, 21 मई को मे बी बारिश हो रही होगी जब सोनाली का मर्डर हुआ, बट सीन सेट करने के लिए हमने कह दिया सनी. मैक्स टू मैक्स दिस इज द क्रिएटिव लिबर्टी वी टेक, बट नॉट मोर देन दैट. But in the coverage of crime in India, my God, dude, I worked as a producer in a media startup in New York. So I was exposed to the media standards of the West, which are insane at like New York Times and Washington Post and The Atlantic. All these outlets, they get hate for fake news and whatnot, sure. But people don't realize the amount of checks these guys go through to publish a single word on their platform. It is insane, the checks they have. On the flip side, here in good old Bharat, we used to research cases, prominent cases, on the internet and newspaper and archives and whatnot. और यार दिखेगा, each newspaper has a different birthday of the victim, different name of the victim, different date of the crime. Each newspaper will have a different one, क्योंकि the standards and checks are so poor, relatively speaking, and especially in this genre where crime हुआ है कुछ crazy सा, तो आपको eyeballs मिलेंगे. तो आप back to MVP, back to what are you prioritizing for? Are you prioritizing for clicks and money? Then why would you focus on a very good product if, imagine, 5 people mysteriously dead in a house? That will get you the eyeballs, correct? That will get you the whatever clicks or whatever traditional media or new age media looks for. Where is the incentive for getting the facts right? Where is the incentive there? Because उन 4 पिलरों में अगर आपका priority नहीं है to feel good about what you make, then just a great clickbaity headline and whatever fact just quickly done, because the race is to be the first to publish about it, right? Then the incentive to get the facts right are low, especially in crime. Crime is a genre where the incentive to get facts right are low because the headline is what matters, right?
Timing is what matters.
Timing and the headline. Exactly. The first person who tells 5 log ka mysterious circumstances mein dehant hua, that's what sells. And because the incentive structure in the West is slightly different, I'm not like absolving those media outlets of not getting shit wrong all the time, but the incentive structure, there is value to being authentic and accurate there. वहाँ journalists की, like if you're in the journalist community there, you'd realize there is a lot of prestige associated with not coming up with false information. Correct. At a NYT or a WAPO or a Wall Street Journal, right? So the incentive structure is different. यहाँ crime में incentive structure is exactly the 4 pillars you laid out, but the priority is given to eyeballs and money. And so मैंने ये realize किया, भाई crime में reporting इतनी off थी कि we were forced to go to primary documents. तो अब हमारी most of our research is either talking to the people involved, witnesses, criminals, whatever, and court documents.
Your favorite crime that you've
Yes.
enjoyed?
One off. Yeah, I'm not going to be favoritism towards my own episodes, but one off, I would say,
go on.
is the case of a man named Suhaib Ilyasi. Now, this name would ring familiar with your audiences aged over 40, I would say. ये नाम उन्हें 100% पता होगा और हमें पता ही नहीं है. मतलब हमारी जनरेशन को सुहेब इलियासी कौन क्या, बट अगर मैं बताऊंगा इसकी स्टोरी क्या, यू आर लाइक हाउ डू आई नॉट नो दिस. सो सुहेब इलियासी started India's first ever crime show, right? So he's like the godfather of true crime podcasting in some way.
He is Indian?
He's Indian.
Okay.
Yeah, very, very much so.
Okay.
And this dude started India's Most Wanted with his then wife, Anju Ilyasi. So Suhaib Ilyasi and Anju Ilyasi. And ये लोग जामिया इस्लामिया में मिले थे, interfaith couple, so sort of fought with their families to get this marriage happen. But the marriage eventually, the families were okay with it. Around 1993, they go to UK. They set up there. They've always wanted to get into production, but things don't work out necessarily until क्राइम स्टॉपर्स करके एक शो था यूके में उस टाइम पे जो बड़ा फेमस हुआ था. और अब वो वहाँ रह रहे थे और उन्होंने रियलाइज़ किया कि क्रिएटिव एपेटाइट इंडिया में. अब मैं ये केस देखता हूँ तो मुझे लगता है मैं और ऐश्वर्या सेम लॉजिक से, मतलब यूएस में दो दोस्त, उनने एपेटाइट देखी, यहाँ बनाया. तो मेरे लिए इस चक्कर में ये केस थोड़ा सा वो है कि इट सॉर्ट ऑफ मैप्स ऑन टू द जर्नी आई हैड. आई होप इट डजंट fully, because as we'll get there, but the initial few bits. So they take inspiration from Crime Stoppers, come to India, make a deck or come up with the show idea, India's Most Wanted, where they will each episode tell the tale of a criminal that is on the wanted list but hasn't been caught, right? And so they'll dissect those cases. The show is initially meant to be hosted by his wife Anju Ilyasi, but when ZTV finally picks up the show, they want Suhaib to host it. So Suhaib ends up hosting the show that airs in 1998. It is an immediate hit. Millions of televisions, bro. Families used to huddle around to watch this man tell about a certain criminal that's out on the loose. Just to quantify how prolific the show was, I think because of the show, more than 100 people got caught when their pictures were displayed on television sets across India. In fact, एक case I think GP Road का है दिल्ली का, जहाँ एक बंदा used to rape prostitutes and kill them, and within an hour of that episode being telecast, that dude was caught because Suhaib's distribution was so much that वो face दिखा दे. And they'll
this is only TV.
This is only TV.
So this is 1998, right? No social.
Nothing TV. And so for 2 years the show goes on. The show is the thing. I mean, it's so hard to convey that it was a thing क्योंकि हमें पता ही नहीं ये show कुछ था, but it was the thing then. अच्छा, show is going well. Things are going well. Suhaib develops a fandom that is tough to sort of capture in words. But I'll give you an example of the fandom he garnered, and it'll be related to the story later. एक Z करके कोर्ट डॉक्यूमेंट्स में इस फैन का नाम Z है, पता नहीं कौन है, अनोनिमस है अभी तक. एक फैन के साथ सुहेब की रिलेशनशिप शुरू हुई, एज इन मतलब नॉट रियली रोमांटिक, जस्ट लाइक दैट फैन केम इन कॉन्टैक्ट सेड आई एम अ ह्यूज फैन, दिस एंड दैट. एंड ये दिस फैन Z, अल्फाबेट Z, sent a locket to their home in Delhi.
Okay.
As a tribute to Suhaib, for you. Anju didn't like this. Anju felt this proximity to your fans was very unnerving. कि वो आपके घर कुछ भेज रहे हैं. She didn't like that relationship and wanted sort of Suhaib to cut it off with this particular fan Z. So Suhaib then sends it back because Anju is right, bro. Like, even you would have, in the process of becoming a content creator, have fans, and there's a healthy relationship you need to maintain, because otherwise that obsession can get a little toxic sometimes. Not always. I mean, I love my fans, but like there's a boundary that you need to maintain between your private and professional. And so Anju's demands, in my opinion, were fine. Her demands were substantiated when that same fan Z sends that locket back again, this time soaked in his own blood. तो ये चल रहा है इलियासी हाउस होल्ड में. द ईयर इज 2000 January. Suhaib and Anju's relationship has been a little fraught for a while. ठीक है, so his antenna are up for weird things. Now he's at his office, long day's work, and his secretary comes into his office, says, I just got a call from Anju ma'am. She was telling me that the revolver is not in the holster. So he's like, why would she tell you about the gun? अपने ही दिमाग में कि why is she talking about the gun? Is that like a implied threat of some kind? Because he was worrying she might be suicidal, or she's having an episode. He wasn't sure. अच्छा, he calls her up and phone पे वो उससे बोलती है, Z1, I lost. Cryptic. He's like, I need to go. I don't know what this Z1, I lost. What do you mean? And like, he has no idea. Immediately rushes home. He is rushed with 2 police officers. So at all times, this man has 2 cops. Why? Because he is literally unveiling fugitives from around India. So he needs protection because he's had threats many a times.
Of course.
So him in his cop escort, he gets back home where his 4-5-year-old daughter is also there, Alia Ilyasi, who's now a very prominent content creator, by the way. Funny how life works out. And he goes home, pacifies his wife Anju, but it proves to be useless. They enter into a sort of a very heated argument, and she reveals the gun behind her hand. Okay? She has
Who reveals the gun?
Anju. She has the gun in her hand, and she says, I will shoot myself. I will shoot myself. They end up calling Anju's sisters who are in US. They are trying to calm her down. Their sisters call their dad up. Dad is in Delhi.
And nobody knows the reason so far. Why does she want to kill herself? Is it because of the fan? Is it because of anything else?
Fraught relationship.
Okay.
Relationship sahi nahi hai. And one argument is it was like having an episode. It was having a breakdown. Ki senseless thoda sa, but गुस्सा. अब वो गुस्सा एक फ्रॉट रिलेशनशिप से जागता है. अब क्यों फ्रॉट है? बहुत रीजंस हैं that we can get into. None that we can conclusively say. But he's eventually able to get the gun out of her hand, unload it, scatter the bullets, throw the gun. Phew. Problem solved, right? You'd think. He goes into his daughter's room, calms her down, because imagine a daughter sort of being witness to this. And Anju re-enters the room, this time with a knife in her hand. And Deepak, she stabs herself twice. She is rushed to a nearby hospital who say no, she needs to be taken to a proper hospital. So she's then rushed to AIMS. Couple of things happen in this period that will prove imperative for the investigation later. One is, on the way she's saying, Suhaib mujhe bacha lo. So she stabbed herself, but she wants to be saved. The other is, Suhaib tells the doctor at that smaller hospital, when the doctor asks, ise kya hua? Suhaib said, isne kuch kha liya.
Okay.
Now she's rushed to AIMS, where the doctor on duty, upon arrival at the hospital, declares Anju Ilyasi dead. 11th January 2000. The family complies with the investigation. Suicide is ruled as the cause initially. Suhaib's in-laws, Anju's parents, are on Suhaib's side. Like a loving damad we have, and this is a suicide. 2 months, that is the narrative. Until in March, early morning, the police comes knocking at Suhaib's house. Wakes him up, arrests him. Arrests him for abetment to suicide and demanding dowry. This complaint was filed by Anju's sisters, who said that Anju's death is abetment to suicide. इसने इसको suicide commit करने के लिए मजबूर किया. As the time goes on, this complaint turns into, hold on, सुहेब ने ही ये मर्डर किया. ठीक है. ऑटोप्सी होती है. ऑटोप्सी का 3 डॉक्टर का पैनल है. एम्स, सफदरजंग एंड वन मोर इन दिल्ली. सो लाइक टॉप ब्रास डॉक्टर्स का 3 डॉक्टर का पैनल सेटअप होता है. डू ऑटोप्सी की क्या हुआ इस वुमन को. शी क्लियरली हैज 2 स्टैब वुंड्स. बट इन मेडिकल लिटरेचर, or forget medical literature, I'm asking you, Deepak, God forbid you were ever to commit suicide, right? But how difficult and illogical is stabbing yourself? People shoot themselves, jump off in the moment things, right? Where you can't regret your choice. But stabbing yourself twice, it just sounds so difficult. Like, imagine stabbing yourself once and then repeating that same task again, despite the pain. So, in medical literature, suicide by stabbing is the rarest of rare. It's very difficult to find. But these forensic experts analyze the nature of the wounds And they concluded that these wounds were self-inflicted. The angle at which the knife was penetrated, and you can listen to the whole podcast when I get into the forensics of the nature of the stab wound. Like, it really gets into the forensics of कितना डेप्थ है कि कोई आपको स्टैब करे वर्सेस आप खुद को करो, प्रेशर डिफरेंट होगा, तो डेप्थ डिफरेंट होगी. तो these are the things these forensic experts used to analyze self-inflicted or homicide. The 3-doctor panel concludes it is self-inflicted suicide, not homicide, not a murder. Suhaib is free, but he's fighting the battle. The battle continues for abetment and suicide and dowry and whatnot. And ऐसे dowry के law का चक्कर प्रॉब्लम क्या है? Dowry मांगी, jail immediate है. उसमें कोई wait time नहीं होता of investigating. You are guilty until proven innocent. One of the few laws in India which has this, which is unfairly used all the time and abused. So because the dowry complaint was put in, so he was immediately shipped to jail, and then so eventually got bail and he was out, and the autopsy came out. Now this happened in 2000.
March of 2000.
Years go by. 2007, 2008. The sisters demand a new autopsy. They're like, नहीं, पहला वाला गलत था. There is no precedent for getting a new autopsy because everything was done correctly. So the first judge said no. Like, क्यों? सब तो इनने किया. But in an unprecedented decision by the judge, a new autopsy was conducted with a 5-doctor panel.
Okay. And this is a fresh 5-doctor panel.
Fresh 5-doctor panel.
Okay.
In 2013, I think. I might get the date wrong here. This panel rules it to be most likely a homicide. Suhaib Ilyasi murdered his wife. In 2017, the Delhi court finds Suhaib guilty of the murder of his wife. So this man goes from hosting India's most wanted to becoming India's most wanted. He still believes in his innocence. In this period, many other things have happened. To find out, go to the Desi Crime Podcast. But I'll tell you, Anju's parents, dad and brother, are on Suhaib's side. So after this complaint is done by Anju's sisters, Anju's dad and Anju's brother say, हमारी daughter had anger issues. Suhaib is not responsible for anything. Suhaib has never asked us for dowry. And we do not support these claims being made by our sister and our daughter. खुद की family में ही disagreement. And so this happened. Alia has now grown up. Alia supports her dad. Alia believes in her dad's innocence. 2017 में कोर्ट का ये verdict आया, guilty. Suhaib escalates it to the Delhi High Court. Delhi High Court revisits it. Now, in Indian system, you have the right to elevate it. And the Delhi High Court does something which, when I was reading the court documents, Deepak, blew my mind. That how, I don't know how to say it nicely, but stupid might be the right word. The 5-panel second autopsy was. ये दिल्ली हाई कोर्ट के जज बैठते हैं, उन डॉक्टर से पूछते हैं, चलो भाई आपने करी सेकेंड ऑटोप्सी, गुड, उसमें आपने मतलब कंक्लूजन ही बदल दिया, तो आपको कोई ठोस एविडेंस रहा होगा टू चेंज द डिसीजन. तो जजेस ने पूछा ठीक है, क्या आपने ओरिजिनल ऑटोप्सी की वीडियो देखी, क्योंकि दे डिडंट हैव द बॉडी 10 years on ना, दे वर रिलाइंग ऑन द एविडेंस कलेक्टेड इन द प्रीवियस ऑटोप्सी. दे आस्क्ड दैट 5 डॉक्टर पैनल, क्या आपने इनिशियल ऑटोप्सी की वीडियो देखी? डॉक्टर पैनल गोज नो. आपने पुराने डॉक्टर्स से बात करी? नो. आपने कोई एविडेंस देखा, लाइक दो शर्ट और वो सब उसने पहनी थी, ये सब है पुलिस के पास, डिड यू सी द एविडेंस? नो. सो द जजेस वर लाइक, on what basis did you reverse the decision? What kind of a autopsy is this where you've seen none of the evidence? What have you done? They had no answer. So to me, this this panel of doctors, I'm not going to make claims about corruption or whatnot, because I don't know. But to me, it is absolutely senseless that they reverse this ruling without any substantiation. And the Delhi High Court saw this through and through. And so in 2018, they came out with their ruling in which they found Suhaib Ilyasi innocent. And since then, he's been a free man.
The human psychology where there is interest in crime. Right? एक तो interest है, innate interest in crime है. I don't know for what reason. I don't know क्या.
एक fun statistic दूँ यहाँ का?
आ जाओ.
Crime का.
आ जाओ.
Guess what's the percentage divide of male to female? So you must know your मैं guess करता हूँ your male to female audience divide. 85 to 15?
85 being female.
Male.
85 being male. नहीं यार, मेरा 55-45 है.
55-45?
Yeah, 55 being male, 45 being
very
female.
Healthy compared to...
Yeah, very healthy.
Very healthy.
What is yours?
70-30 or 75-25 female male.
Okay.
Preponderance of female audience. But it's not unique to us, it's unique to the genre. True crime. True crime has a wider female audience than almost any other genre. After cosmetics and ये सब, this is what is consumed.
Really?
Really. अब आप try to understand करो क्यों?
हाँ क्यों? आ जाओ.
बहुत reasons हैं यार. Different schools of thoughts have different reasons. So, I don't fully buy any one of them, but most things in life are multivariate, not black and white. So, pick and choose what you think makes more sense. A feminist sort of sociologist would argue it is, it's women are more prone to being victims of violence. And so, listening and watching true crime
would make them aware.
Make them aware. That is one. I don't fully buy that. That is partly it. But that's not why they listen to it. They are entertained also out of it. They sleep to my podcast, So, and you can ask my co-host herself. She would argue she's not listening for safety per se, but not sure why she likes it either. The other arguments are because women tend to be more the subjects of violence, right? And you know your female friends or your sister being out on the street at night, especially in India, world over actually, there is a fear they feel that you can never even conceptualize. वो उनको हर उसकी gaze से हल्का सा वो frame of mind ही different है क्योंकि fear इतना ingrained है because of all the things that happen. Listening to a true crime podcast helps them some amount of voyeurism कि आप victim की जिंदगी vicariously जी सकते हो, but you can switch it off and go to sleep whenever you want. There is a certain amount of... I'll tell you how I experience that. My favorite author is Charles Bukowski. One of my favorite. Now, he's this drunken poet. अगर कभी Bukowski पढ़ोगे, the one theme that stands out is he's a drunken poet womanizer. That's what he is. Now, I've always found the life of a drunk very fascinating. कि कैसा होता होगा दिन भर पीना. But मैं खुद शराबी हूँ नहीं. Health is very important to me. So, as much as I want to experience that life, I know I never will. I read Bukowski and it transports me into the universe of a drunkard. And I suddenly am vicariously able to experience that life. Right? I think there is some amount of that going on in true crime. Where in a safe setting, you get to experience the extremities of human behavior. Right? You get to, like if I watch a Jeffrey Dahmer, I get to experience this psychopathic serial killer from the safety of the screen. So I think that's something that's appealing. और यार और भी काफ़ी रीज़न है, कुछ तो मुझे समझ नहीं आता. So many of my listeners, they listen to me to go to sleep. I'm like, how? Aishwarya, she listens to Crime Junkies to go to sleep. How do you do it? Dude, we were, one of the shows we were shooting for Bhootbusters करके, we spent like a night in the most haunted locations in India and पूरा crew एक साथ है और ऐश्वर्या के रूम से आवाज़ें आएंगी and the woman was killed and she's sound asleep because that puts her to sleep.
That is so creepy. Dude.
It's so creepy, but it's so they love it. Many listeners
imagine these voices coming out of a room and then suddenly, I mean, somehow you enter the room and she's sleeping, listening to a crime podcast. You never know whether
day in day out, bro.
Damn.
It's a ritual.
Aishwarya, why would you do that?
Aishwarya and most of my listeners, why would you do that?
Oh, wow,
Yeah.
that's very creepy, dude.
Yeah.
Talk to us about Bhanghar Fort.
कुछ नहीं है यार.
कुछ नहीं है? You entered Bhanghar Fort, right?
Bhanghar, spent a night. Very, very pretty. I will give you
Very
that.
pretty.
Very pretty. Very pretty. Beautiful fort, man. It's really nice. वैसे.
It's considered to be the most haunted fort of India, right?
हाँ. ढोंग. तो मैं गया कुलधरा भानगढ़. अब इंडिया में मैं वही बोलूँ ना, you'll see many haunted यूट्यूबर्स एंड रील्स, और बड़ा बीच में पॉपुलर हुआ था, अभी भी है, बनाते हो कुछ भूत वूत का. पीपल मेकअप शिट डूड, पीपल मेकअप शिट बिकॉज दैट गेट्स देम क्लिक्स. आई डोंट नो, आई नो you know what I'm talking about, right? The people that say stuff like that, they're getting one of the 4 pillars, eyeballs. I don't know how they get sleeping with themselves at night. I couldn't. So the entire concept of our show was Bhoot Busters. We wanted to bust this because I don't believe in ghosts, but I'm open-minded. I don't believe in ghosts, but I'm scared shitless. That's my tagline. ठीक है, बहुत डर लगता है, but मानता नहीं हूँ. तो हम भाई बहुत haunted locations गए, but राजस्थान में कुलधरा और भानगढ़ हैं जो पता चलती हैं, correct? You go there, you ask the locals, they will tell you it is a tourism scheme by the government. राजस्थान के टूरिज्म बोर्ड पे कुलधरा एंड भानगढ़ आर एनलिस्टेड एज हॉन्टेड प्लेसेस. ऑफिशियल गवर्नमेंट टूरिज्म बोर्ड पे टूर्स हैं बिकॉज इट ड्रॉज मनी, यू नो. being ascribed as haunted gets people to go to that place, creates publicity. Like there was this boy outside Kuldhara, like a proper Rajasthani boy. पानी मांगा मुझसे, पानी दिया, मैंने कहा पानी के बदले स्टोरी सुनाओ, तो उसे कैमरे पे स्टोरी सुनाई कुलधरा की, रटी हुई स्टोरी पूरी सुनाई. मैंने कहा मानते हो उसमें? बट बकवास है. चला गया. तो मेरा बड़ा फनी. तो कुलधरा भानगढ़ देखो, खुद पर्सनली कुछ नहीं एक्सपीरियंस किया. मैं सारे वो फलाना ढमकाना गैजेट्स ले गया था, कुछ महसूस नहीं हुआ ब्रो. But one place in Rajasthan where we did go, which was haunting in like the adjective, not necessarily literally, was the Balaji temple. And it's one of the most prominent exorcism temples of India.
Which temple is it?
Balaji Mehendipur. It's in Rajasthan only.
Okay.
And we attended our first live exorcism, had hidden cams and got bits of it. Of course, censored, we've uploaded it. And that entire Hanuman temple has people that have come to be exorcised, to be ridden of the ghosts that possess them or the spirits that possess them. And that environment is crazy. You will see people that are not in their senses. Now, the crew and I and Aishwarya, we had a long discussion while there as to what's happening. 90% of the people there to be exorcised are women. तो एक तो आप पहले ही सोचो ये what's up here? The jig is up. Do ghosts possess women more? And women just acting crazy, dude. Somersaults, jumping up and down, swinging left and right, eyes piche, like I can just see the white bit of their eyes.
And you've seen this?
Seen this. It's on tape. Bhootbusters episode, but the Balaji episode, it's all on tape, and nobody had documented this temple before us properly. So that's why I was very interested, and that's why this video has also performed really well, is because we were able to capture a side of India that wasn't, at least not in this video medium. Travelers have talked about it. Western travelers have written in the 80s and 90s in the Harvard report and stuff. You'd find there have been studies conducted on this by Harvard and Ames in the 80s. To see if exorcism actually works. It's very fascinating because it does work. It does work in curing. So is it because it's ridding of the ghosts, or because it is a form of hypnosis, of hypnotic therapy?
And people are coming to the temple to get rid of this.
Get rid of this. There'll be pundits that will exorcise you. So I attended my first exorcism, in which several women lay on the floor, and the pundits would say certain things, and the spirit that is possessing them comes out, and so they are writhing on the floor, rolling, tongues out, and just going absolutely bonkers. And it's because the Pandit puts them in a trance-like state. In that trance-like state, after following a certain ritual, the spirit can be removed. It doesn't always work. But the thing is, when the studies were conducted, it worked. People went back home without the possession. Or without the symptoms. Possession के symptoms.
And this is for how long? Kitna din?
The ritual?
Yeah.
Depends on the ritual. There are, so the beauty of India sometimes, the systems we have. So you must have seen Conjuring or Insidious, and so you like how Catholicism में proper structure है exorcism का, right? It needs to get the Vatican's approval, and there are steps to follow. There are priests segregated for exorcisms. India has that and more. हमें पता ही नहीं है. Rituals का bro, it's like वो कहते हैं बालाजी में कहते हैं बालाजी का कोर्ट है. वहाँ राजा को हनुमान को दरखास्त देनी पड़ती है इन द फॉर्म ऑफ 2.5 रुपीज़ एंड 2 काले लड्डू. बड़ा स्पेसिफिक है. अच्छा, और अगर प्रेत इतने में नहीं माना तो एक बड़ी दरखास्त करके होता है, तो 4 रुपये और 4 लड्डू ऐसे से होते हैं. नाउ आई हैव गिवन यू अ वेरी वनीला पिक्चर ऑफ बालाजी. तो बालाजी में ये सब होता है, ऐसे वाले एक्सोर्सिज्म. 80s और 90s में जब वीडियो एज सच नहीं था, बालाजी में बहुत और तरीक़ों के एक्सोर्सिज्म होते थे, जो अब कुछ कहते हैं नहीं होते और कुछ कहते हैं बंद दरवाज़ों के पीछे होते हैं. बट 80s और 90s में ट्रैवलर्स दैट हैव रिटन ट्रैवल लॉग्स ऑफ दिस प्लेस टॉक अबाउट people hanging upside down being beaten by bats to get the ghost out. People being chained for months at one place, not being given food so that the ghost dies hungry. But many people have also died in this process. Of course. People are tying somebody upside down and beating them in order to beat the ghost. उन्हें नहीं मार रहे, भूत को मार रहे हैं. कैथोलिसिज्म के एक्सोर्सिज्म में भी ये होता है एक. बट यहाँ रैम्पेंटली ओपनली होता था. ये सब तो हमें नहीं दिखा क्योंकि ये गवर्नमेंट ने बंद कर दिया है. बट हम जब मेन बालाजी स्ट्रक्चर में थे और वहाँ लोगों से पूछा था कि यार कुछ जो डार्कर चीज़ें हैं वो कहाँ देखने को मिलेंगी, तो उन्होंने कहा था वो दे पॉइंटेड एट द टॉप ऑफ अ पहाड़ी, वहाँ जाओ. द होल टीम वॉकड ऊपर, तो वहाँ हमने अपना एक्सोर्सिज्म पहले देखा. वहाँ
द टीम वाज स्कैर्ड, द टीम वाज ओके.
This was the last shoot, so this was after we had travelled Bhanghar and all. तो टीम थोड़ा सा
हो गई थी
confident,
हाँ.
but इस प्लेस ने टीम को सबसे ज़्यादा चकाचौंध छोड़ा क्योंकि we went in with confidence. भानगढ़ कर लिया, कुलधरा कर लिया, डमेलो हाउस कर दिया, ये कर लिया, वो कर लिया. But this place really shook us. And we were coming down यार. Exorcism देख लिया अपना, scary but nothing torturous. Scary, nothing torturous. हम नीचे आ रहे हैं, अंधेरा हो रहा है, सनसेट हो चुका है, आरती शुरू हो गई है. एंड द मोस्ट हॉन्टिंग मेमोरी आई हैव ऑफ दिस प्लेस इज देयर इज वी कमिंग डाउन फ्रॉम अ गली, नो barely anybody around, huge like metal gate, like खोलो तो राजा का जैसे दरवाज़ा होता है ना कैसल के एंट्रेंस पे, वैसा wooden with metal bolts. And we can hear women screaming from inside. Screaming, but the door is locked. Don't know what's happening. This is at night. And when we asked around, we were told that these practices that travelers wrote about in the 80s and 90s continue, except behind closed doors now. So we related to it going, I think we were just witness to something much more horrid than what we had seen.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this still happens?
Still happens. We went there last year. It's very unnerving, man.
Damn, there is so much of information or crime per se that probably we need to sort of open our eyes to and figure out that this is exactly what happens. Because there's a lot of myth out there that hey, Bhanghar is the most haunted place and it's scary and all that. I've never heard somebody go to Bhanghar and tell me that hey, it's haunted. You're the first person I'm meeting and I'm saying that hey, I spent a night in Bhanghar. It's not. It's all crap that people say. Because you would buy a story lived by somebody because they've lived it. They're sharing their experience.
Correct.
You would not essentially listen to people speaking on the internet out of nowhere.
Correct.
So this is interesting because I've never heard anybody speak about Bhanghar like the way you did because you've been there.
Yeah.
And damn, this is
सारे गिज़मो सब गैजेट निकाल के भूत हाँ कुछ नहीं, डर भी नहीं लगा, लोग भी नहीं मानते यार.
You were talking about the DeMello.
सुना है डमेलो हाउस के बारे में?
नहीं यार.
यार तो ये है गोवा में एक पोर्चुगीज विला.
Okay.
ठीक है. अब
You've been to DeMello House?
हाँ हाँ. I'll talk of the places where I've been. And I am a
यार हर जगह जाके आ गए. मतलब this is real crime coverage where you go to a place, not just crime coverage, as in
thriller,
Ghostbusters,
yeah,
thriller,
yeah. यार एंड कहानी इस पोर्चुगीज़ विला की ये है कि it was owned by two Portuguese brothers, 16th century. And I mean, understand, man, like this villa, if you go to, firstly, it's in a very posh area. Secondly, it's enormous, but it's dilapidated or खंडेर है अब. You must have friends sort of that are गोवा का भी जो वो हो रहा है, सबको गोवा जाना है, सबको गोवा में प्रॉपर्टी खरीदनी है. सो गोवा में भी प्रॉपर्टी इज़ द हॉट थिंग, राइट?
Right.
But this is still empty. So मतलब the incentive to not stay here or buy this property must be that high.
Right.
What is that? What is the reason? So families that have lived here have fallen to some tragedy or the other, and locals believe this is haunted. ठीक है, ये कहानी थी. मैं गया, locals बोल रहे हैं मत जाओ, haunted है, तुम्हारी सेफ्टी. बहुत बार एंटर करने से पहले locals आ रहे थे, मना कर रहे थे. We went to DeMello House at on the midnight of Friday the 13th.
Oh.
So we entered at 11:30 Thursday 12th. So the goal was to spend Friday as Friday the 13th happens, we are inside. Now backtracking to the story
This
of
is
this
when?
place. This is 6-8 months ago.
Okay.
And we are so backtracking to the story of DeMello House to set
Right.
the context, which is these two brothers owned it, 16th century. Anybody who's lived there ever since has fallen to some tragedy or the other, which can be traced back to these two brothers themselves that had a feud for who will get the rights to the property. And so the legend goes, and it's a legend only. I can't substantiate it with archival documents. I tried looking for it, but couldn't find anything. But there is some value of folk tales also, I believe, that the younger one killed the older brother, buried him in the backyard of DeMello. He killed him. Wow, property his. Except now he started feeling like his brother was around the house all the time. And he became a schizophrenic of sorts, where he saw his brother, heard his brother, felt his brother's presence in that house. And he killed himself exactly where he killed his brother. Damn. Both the brothers are buried in the DeMello house. Locals report hearing footsteps all the time, people screaming and shouting all the time.
And the house is shut.
The house is dilapidated. Shut is how you're able to enter, which we did.
Okay.
But it's not habitable by any means. You know, it's a crumbling structure, but a huge structure. Like, so it's a big villa. Like, it's a big villa.
How did you stay there?
So रात के 11:30 बज रहे थे. We parked our car थोड़ा पीछे. It was raining.
यार ये बहुत ही स्कैरी आदमी है. यार ये क्या कर?
The moment I got out of the car,
हाँ.
outside DeMello, this is all on tape, I puked my guts out.
The moment you stepped
Out of the car
to
outside
enter
DeMello, I puked my guts out. I was just puking. I've never puked that much in my life. I don't know how. But I was puking off. पूरा tape पे मतलब हम लोग जब edit कर रहे थे episode, we like थोड़ा सा डालो, ये तो disgusting लगेगा. But it was to capture, wait, what suddenly happened? Okay, it's raining, we need to get in, can't get the equipment wet. As we're trying to enter, the locals, some that drive by are very hesitant of us going in, so I sort of talk them down, I act smooth, and I console them, and they're on their way. We find a back entrance into the house. The team jumps in around 11:50 at this point. And man, we set up our devices that ghost hunters use, right? We don't believe in these devices, by the way. We use them because this is what the community uses, but we believe it's just fake gizmos and whatnot. Midnight strikes, clock turns, Friday the 13th. I'm not feeling well at all, and we can hear footsteps. Now, whether it's raindrops, we're not sure, but it sounds like footsteps, bro.
Footsteps and raindrops are quite distinct, I'm sure.
I would say
no?
so. I would I would agree they're quite. I would agree they're quite distinct. But your senses can confuse you sometimes, especially when you're in flight or fright. Right? It's a very scary environment. Right. And up to that point, I hadn't felt that scared. मैंने मालचा में भी shoot किया था. There are different, but वहाँ मुझे डर एहसास हो रहा था. And man, सारे devices try करे, ऐसा कुछ device ने कुछ नहीं किया. And then something happened on tape. I remember it more vividly than anything. That made me want to leave, made the crew want to leave. हम एक मैग लाइट यूज़ करें. मैग लाइट इज़ अ लाइट जो खुद ऑन और ऑफ होती है अगर कोई चीज़ पास आए. तो वो मैग लाइट ऑन और ऑफ हो रही थी खुद. ठीक है. एंड सडनली एक जानवर की घुर्राने की आवाज़ आई. बट it wasn't a dog. Like, I know what a dog sounds like. This was like a fucking lion. Okay. Right? And the sound was coming from here, right beside me. Right? And there's no light in this house. Right? We are just operating on our flashlights and the cameraman, whatever he can. We looked beside us, fearful that there is some animal from the forest that has come in, and there is nothing. We can't see anything. But the sound continues. And we're like, I can hear it from there. And it's the most ferocious. I can't see anything. Where is this sound coming from? That scared us. That scared the living daylights out of us. And sound kept coming. We wanted to get out, man. We just wanted to leave. But we were like, we haven't completed the investigation, haven't tried out the different devices. And around
it's good device कब पड़ा है? Just leave. Hey, Bhagwan.
And
I'm sorry for the audience if this breaks the flow, but I just had to.
I'm a committed.
4 डिवाइस है. एक यूज हो गया, इसमें कैप्चर हो गया ऑडियो, लेकिन ये नहीं हुआ. इसको तो करने आया हूँ.
Committed content creator.
Of course.
But यही literally यही था कि चौथा वाला भी किया नहीं है. तो हम वो setup करते हैं. And we set it up, Deepak. I kid you not. Again, I don't need to lie about any of this because it's all on tape, right?
Of course.
We start here, people shouting. 2 people shouting. From where we don't know. It's 1 in the morning.
The audio of it is in the tape.
It's there in the tape. It's on.
Guys, please, I'm gonna watch it myself, but I'm gonna link it in the description. Please watch it.
And we were hearing people shout, and at that point we were like, okay, we're done with this place. And we switched off our lights and tried to leave as quietly as possible. And I can't tell you, bro, the relief when I was outside. I was so relieved. That episode, that place messed with my.
And what time did you leave the place?
1 in the morning. So we spent an hour, roughly, in that place.
Oh, like 11:30 to 1ish, like just the 2 hours. Not the entire
we couldn't. Impossible. कर ही नहीं पाते. Also पूरा देख लिया था. छोटा सा विला है, मतलब छोटा नहीं,
but
बड़ा.
But the idea was to was very specifically to spend Friday the 13th there.
Friday the 13th there. I wanted to do that.
एक तो haunted place में जा रहे हो. ऊपर से
Christian haunted place.
Christian haunted place ऊपर से.
और उन्हीं के
लिए है कि Friday the 13th को जाना है. Are you okay?
I mean, I haven't gone to a therapist, so clearly that is not sorted yet.
So thank you for being a part of the show.
Appreciate it, bro.
We'll do a repeat where we cover a couple more in terms of Osho and a couple of others.
I'll tell you about the time I was tricked into coming to an orgy.
Yara, how do I end the show here?
A cliffhanger, bro. My life is based on cliffhangers.
This is the best cliffhanger you could ever get. On that note, guys, bhai, your experience of being on the show on that camera, कैसा लगा, क्या लगा? Outro खुद कर दो.
यार नाम शो का चिलार पॉड है. Now Deepak said कि ये different type of chill था, but to me, so I'm so used to this space and these conversations, so this felt like a very nice environment to talk to somebody about them. And you're a great host, man. Like,
really?
It's like talking to a buddy, and that's very important to inculcate. So yeah, that's my experience.
Tell people to subscribe to the channel. It's called Deepak Parekh on YouTube.
यार subscribe to the channel Deepak Parekh on YouTube. Please, इतना ही मांगते हैं, free चीज़ है. And I'll end with अपने show का tagline.
Of course, please go.
Which is stay safe, stay crazy, stay desi.
Stay safe, stay crazy, stay desi. तो टंग ट्विस्टर हो गया, मेरे से बोला ही नहीं जा रहा. आप हर एपिसोड पे कैसे करते हो पता नहीं. बट ऑन दैट नोट गाइज, थैंक यू सो मच फॉर वॉचिंग द एपिसोड. मेरे तो भाई मैं बोल नहीं सकता बट दिमाग फट गया है पूरा. Thank you so much for watching. Tell us your favorite part in the comment section. Like, share, subscribe, you know the drill. And I'm going to link his channel and the episode that I spoke about. Which was the episode that I spoke about?
बहुत बोले हैं यार.
नहीं, अभी when I said
DeMello
House वाला episode, I'm going to link it in the description. Please go watch it. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to our other channel, which is Deepak Parik Clips, where we post short form content and clips from the main episode. So please go watch that, and see you around next Friday at 6 p.m. Thank you so much for watching. Cheers.